Hello, love. So let's talk about freeing ourselves from the nightmare all around us, where you go to the news and it's so much bad news that it's so overwhelming. One of the things that's really important that I want you to just take in a light kind of a way, when we're joining the movement to save the world, the problem is what we tend to do is we externalize the demon and we join a cause, and unfortunately these causes end up creating more of the nightmare. So for example, the whole Nazi thing was to rid the world of the evil Jews. The all of the lynchings that happened for the African American people, and the incarceration of so many African American and Latin people in the United States. It's all under the guise of joining this movement to save the world. Gang rapes, bullying, lynchings, all of these things, genocides of the Native American people. It's all within this whole idea that you're going to free yourself of the nightmare by being a crusader to help the world. And then later on, you find out you were the nightmare. You joined the thing that caused all this pain when you thought, this is the example with all of the internet disinformation where people join the QAnon and they think they're really helping the world. So what's interesting is that sick beliefs that we externalize and we don't face in ourselves, sick aspects of our jealousy, our possessiveness, our fear, our greed, our laziness, our hate, our paranoia, rage, our bully demands. We externalize these things instead of working on ourselves, right? And when we do that, our phobias, all of these things, they start to become real amongst us. They start to become real in our family, where people become real child abusers, or wife abusers, or husband batterers. So what has happened, to free yourself of the nightmare and yet also be part of, you want to change the story, right? I'm going to suggest to you a really strange thing, okay? I mean, in the United States, we have this, the worst combination for a child is to both be totally neglected and then abused. Neglected and abused. Neglected and abused and then spoiled. Spoiled, rotten, and showered because the parent feels so guilty, and then neglected again, and then showered and spoiled, and then abused and spoiled. This is a really, really lethal combination. So what happens is we have a nation of kind of spoiled adults who are also terribly neglected and deprived and having been very abused. So to get a hold of ourselves, to heal this really intense reality of our sick culture in the United States that has lost its soul in so many ways, is something that you might think is a little crazy. I would suggest you have stories at night, whether it's Netflix or fairy tales or a book that you're reading, because story is how we face the demon. When we were little kids, when I was a little kid, the whole TV thing, the Netflix thing, it really was not happening very well. And stories were the thing. And stories, these Grimm's fairy tales, they were so brutal. They were so terrifying. I mean, and the wolf eats Little Red Riding Hood, and it's in her tummy. You have to cut him out and get him out with a knife. Her hands are chopped off by the parents. Bluebeard, he puts rings around all the girls' necks. They're going to hang them in the morning. I mean, it's just brutal. But the thing about really scary fairy tales is they always serve the purpose of us facing demons in ourselves and consciously grappling with how would I deal with that, and what part of me is in that. And people don't realize that's what's really going on, but you can see when they study children who have stories with all kinds of monsters and stuff in them, they sleep peacefully, actually. It's the children who don't have stories with monsters in them, where everything's sweet, 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 who have nightmares, because they're trying to work out the nightmarish levels of the world in their sleep. And those snakes, those bears, those tigers within us are metaphorically faced when you have story. And so this is the interesting thing about the violence in Netflix, the incredible abuse of women and men, the torture. I mean, it's really terrifying, because it gives people ABCs on how to completely abuse each other. And that scares me. But I notice sometimes when I'm watching one of these shows, I'm like, because there's all these parts of myself that past lives even, or aspects of fears and desires that I end up facing by watching a very intense series on Netflix, for example, or reading a book that's really, really viscerally terrifying at times. But as long as the book has heart, as long as the Netflix story has a perspective that's always the hero's journey of staying true to love, of staying true to self, right? So I just want to encourage you to exit the nightmare by joining story, theater, books, movies, joining those on the level of letting them help you deal with the energy, let the energy move. But don't feel that you have to join a movement in order to deal with the terror of the world, because you're just probably going to add to the story. You're going to amplify the nightmares going on by joining any movement, because it's always us against them. And as soon as you're us against any of them, you're already creating the war. So how do we join with each other? How do we do that? That'll be my next video. Okay. Much love to you, darling. If you're interested in Ascension Integration Coaching, connect with me at lovelifewitheve@gmail.com. Or if you want Love Life Coaching, here I am. Okay.